Hello, Namaste. I am Ketan Kang from 192 Consulting. After having discussed what is MCA, what is IPFA, now let us first go into the concept of a company. How the company law defines the term company and what are the features or characteristics of this entity called as company in which the shareholders invest. So typically there are two types of companies. One is private limited companies and others are public limited companies. We must have heard or we have heard about these two companies everywhere. But getting the conceptual clarity is something very important that we thought fit that our investors or the stakeholders should know. And so that's why we have taken up an effort to put this video in the public domain. So let us start from what is a private limited company. So private limited company, there are three norms. So first norm is that the maximum number of shareholders for a private limited company cannot exceed 200. This would not include the past and present employees of the company. So that means if a particular person is an employee of the company and he is a shareholder of the company, that person should be excluded or those number of persons should be excluded from the count of 200. Second, minimum number of directors for a private limited company should be 2. So there should be at least 2 directors on a private limited company. Third, the shares of private limited company are not freely transferable. Now, the concept of free transferability is that like in public limited companies or in the secondary market where we deal with the shares day in, day out, we sell, we buy the shares and whenever the market appreciates, we sell those shares. That is called as free transferability. That is not present in the private limited company. 3 very important notes about private limited company. The number of members, excluding its past and present employees, should not exceed 200. The shares are not freely transferable. And thirdly, there should be minimum 2 directors. Now, after having understood the concept of private limited company, let's look into what is a public limited company. Now, the concept of public limited company should be understood in a comparative analysis of a private limited company, because the law states it very easily and very conveniently that any company which is not a private limited company is a public limited company. So that means any company which do not have these features or break these features, then it is a public limited company. Let us talk about the features of the public limited company. As I've told, private limited company, the maximum number of members should be 200. For a public limited company, the maximum number of members can be unlimited. Secondly, their shares are freely transferable. So, even if the shares are held by a single person, that person can transfer the shares to any other person and that transferability is completely free. I've also mentioned that a private limited company should have only or minimum 2 directors. For a public limited company, minimum number of directors should be 3. For a private limited company, along with the directors, minimum number of members also be 2. So there should be 2 persons who are directors and the members of the company. Same persons can be the directors and members or shareholders of the company. So, the number of minimum members in case of private limited company is 2 and the number of minimum members in case of a public limited company is 7. So this is the basic fundamental difference between the private limited company and public limited company. In public companies, they can also be bifurcated as listed as well as unlisted. Listed companies are the companies whose shares are listed on the recognized stock exchange. There are number of recognized stock exchanges in India. Most primary that we know is National Stock Exchange and Bombay Stock Exchange, that is NSE and BSE. But there are other stock exchanges also. These, the shares quoted or the shares listed on these stock exchanges are considered as benchmark stock exchanges. That does not mean that the shares of the companies are not listed at all if they are not on these stock exchanges. They can be listed on other stock exchanges. There are state-wise stock exchanges also, wherein the listed public company or a public company can list the shares. So it can be presumed that if in case the shares are listed or quoted in the market, then the company is a public limited company. For unlisted companies, a company can be a public limited company yet unlisted. This video was precisely to make our viewers understand what is the structure of the company, what are the types of the companies, how should we look at a particular script, and what should be the presumptions when we go to reclaim the shares, when we approach the IPFA to reclaim the shares. So reclaiming of the shares basically happens of the listed entities, listed companies. Should you have any question about the structure of the companies, please reach out to us through the comments in this section or by writing to us on info@192.in. For the time being, this is Ketan Kang signing off. Thank you so much.